Hey everyone, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're going to completely rebuild how we understand the OpenAI ecosystem. Because honestly, we need to move way beyond that simple magic text box you might be used to and start looking at the true complex machinery that's actually driving these platforms.
Here's our quick roadmap for today. We'll kick things off with Beyond the Basic Chatbot. Then, we'll unpack the 5-layer ecosystem, compare ChatGPT versus the platform, explore conversational versus agentic AI, and wrap it all up with governance and human oversight.
All right, part 1, Beyond the Basic Chatbot. Let's start with the mental model that, frankly, almost everyone brings to their very first AI interaction. It usually goes exactly like this. I type something into ChatGPT, and it answers. You type, hey, write an email to my boss summarizing our project, and boom, it spits out a draft. Now, this simple prompt and answer loop, it's a great starting point for beginners. But here is the absolute critical takeaway for today. It is fundamentally incomplete if you want to integrate AI into real professional, educational, or enterprise workflows. The technical and business decisions you're going to make depend entirely on having a much deeper vocabulary than just thinking of it as a basic chatbot.
And this brings us to a massive light bulb moment. The intelligence engine is not the whole system. The model itself is just one piece of a much larger, layered operating environment. Think about it for a second. The exact same underlying model can pop up inside a regular ChatGPT window, a totally custom web app for your customers, a voice-activated agent, or a highly governed enterprise workflow. The engine powering the thought process doesn't make up the entire car. You still have to build the rest of the vehicle around it.
So let's look at how that vehicle is built in part 2, the 5-layer ecosystem. This framework shifts our mindset from a single product into a durable architectural blueprint. Let's stack these up. Down at the foundation, layer 1, we have the models. These are the raw intelligence engines handling text, vision, and reasoning. Moving up to layer 2, we get ChatGPT experiences. That's the product layer making those raw models actually usable for everyday work. Then, Layer 3 introduces developer APIs and SDKs. You absolutely need these if you're building custom applications from scratch. Layer 4 brings in connected tools. This is a huge one because it adds capabilities like web search or code execution, turning the model from a static brain into an active participant. And finally, capping the whole thing off is Layer 5, safety and governance, handling all those non-negotiable operational controls.
Now, try this mental exercise. I want you to place every AI tool or feature you currently know into one of these distinct layers. Doing this is so incredibly important because, let's be real, product names are going to change, and in this industry, they change fast. But this underlying selection logic, that endures. Knowing which surface fits your specific use case is basically the ultimate future-proof skill.
Which leads us perfectly into part 3, ChatGPT versus the platform.
To make the smartest business decisions, you have to understand this major fork in the road. You need to know whether your team just needs a ready-made application environment or if you actually need the API to construct a custom workflow. ChatGPT is a completed product experience. It's built to help a person use AI for everyday productivity right out of the box. The OpenAI platform, on the other hand, those are the raw building blocks for developers. So if you want to build a customer service bot that actively queries your company's private inventory database, you need the platform, not just ChatGPT.
Okay, before we dive into how these tools actually take action, let's quickly lock in some vital vocabulary. First up, the context window. Think of the context window as the model's short-term memory, or maybe like the size of a physical workbench. It's the absolute limit of working information available to the model during a single request. You can only fit so many documents and instructions on that desk at one time before things just start falling off the edges.
But what happens when that workbench is completely full, or the answer you need simply isn't on the desk? That is where retrieval steps in. If the model doesn't know the answer, the system basically has to walk over to the filing cabinet. It uses read tools like running a web search or executing database queries to pull in specific external information and drop it right back onto the workbench, directly into the model's context window.
And once you pull that information from the filing cabinet, you need grounding. Grounding is how we anchor the model's responses in actual, verifiable facts. By tying the response to the relevant evidence we just retrieved, grounding forces the AI to basically show its math. This is a crucial guardrail against hallucinations. You know, those plausible but completely incorrect answers that we absolutely have to avoid in a professional setting.
All right, moving on to part 4, conversational versus agentic AI.
With those definitions in our back pocket, we are ready to see how AI steps beyond just chatting. Agentic AI is where things get really fascinating, because it moves the system from just talking to actually doing. The core difference here is authority. Conversational AI responds to your prompts, it drafts, explains, summarizes, but you remain the actor. Agentic AI completely shifts that paradigm. It pursues a complex goal, chooses which tools to use on its own, inspects its own results, and can independently prepare or perform authorized actions.
To really grasp how authority scales, let's map out an action ladder. Stage 1 is reading, like executing a search. A tool just scanning a database is very low risk. Stage 2 moves to recommending, where it generates insights. Stage 3 is preparing, like drafting up an action plan. And then we hit Stage 4, acting. This is sending emails, deploying code, updating records. As the system climbs this ladder, the risks dramatically shift. A read-only tool at Stage 1 is perfectly safe, but a Stage 4 tool that has the authority to delete files or wire money? That changes the game completely and demands a totally different level of architecture.
Which brings us to a quote that brilliantly captures the hidden reality of our ecosystem. The user sees a prompt and response. The system may contain an entire control plane. In other words, while you're just looking at a simple chat bubble on your screen, the software behind the scenes is incredibly busy. It's checking your identity, verifying security rules, routing data to different tools, and assembling instructions, all before it ever hands you a single response.
And that leads us to our final section, governance and human oversight. This is the climax of our layered blueprint, the non-negotiable need for control. Imagine a scenario where a manager asks an AI assistant to review a project report and email a revised action plan to the whole team. Just think about that for a second. Where exactly should a human intervene before that email goes out? Where do privacy, validation, and identity actually fit into this workflow?
Well, the answer is that those checks have to be explicitly hardwired into your operational controls. You have to force a distinction between merely preparing a draft and executing an approved action. Preparing the plan, that's just text generation. But sending it is an action that requires strict identity authorization, clear tool permissions, mandatory human approval before the send button is clicked, and detailed logging so we have a paper trail. You also need clear evaluation metrics, escalation protocols, and robust rollback plans if things go sideways.
This reveals a golden rule for the whole ecosystem. As authority increases, controls absolutely must increase. Safety isn't some afterthought or a quick compliance checklist you run through at the very end. It fundamentally defines what the AI can access, which specific tools it's allowed to use, and exactly when human oversight has to step in to validate an action.
Think of it like this, and I literally cannot stress this enough. The model is just the engine. It generates incredible power and intelligence, but an operational AI system governs exactly how that power is wielded. To drive safely on the highway, you can't just have a massive engine. You still need a steering wheel, a dashboard, and highly responsive brakes. The model is only one part of the total system. When we step back and look at this complete ecosystem, we see that integrating AI is fundamentally about designing architecture with evidence, safety, and a deep sense of accountability right at its core. It's about knowing exactly where human review belongs when these powerful new tools are granted the ability to act on our behalf.
So, as you move forward with building your own workflows, I want to leave you with this final thought. Are you going to keep treating AI like a magic text box, just hoping for the best? Or will you take control of the entire ecosystem, actively designing the layers, the tools, and the governance to truly and safely leverage this technology? The choice is entirely yours.